Hello. Hi. So glad to be here. Thank you very much for being here. I have the honor to introduce two great entrepreneurs and engineers. The first of them is Matt. Matt used to work at Apple. He was very involved in the development for the first generation iPod, and he worked in a bunch of Apple products after that. He became a co-founder at Nest, and he rocked. You know, he sold the company to Google for a lot of money. The second guy, also an engineer, Mike, he's a big data expert. He worked in Twitter. He hired more than 300 engineers in less than a year. And now he's a partner of Kleiner Perkins. So what do you say? Let's give them a very, very warm welcome, startup grind style, to Mike and Matt.
Good morning. How's it going?
Thank you all for coming early. And Matt, thanks for joining me on stage here this morning.
All good.
We just heard a little bit about this company you just sold for a lot of money. But let's back up, because I think everyone has a different entrepreneurial journey. And you went to CMU, you left CMU, you went to Apple.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the time when you were at Apple, and you and I don't know how, like, tell us about the story about how Nest got created and why you decided to leave, this amazing project you're working at on Apple called iOS.
Yeah, so I joined Apple in '05. That was back before it was really cool again. That was, year 4, year 5 of iPod, 2 years before iPhone, and it was part of a really kind of high growth period for Apple, which is a really, really exciting time. Kind of right place, right time, right group, right project. Like literally all the kind of stars aligned. And it was an opportunity to learn how to build products and how to work with great people building those great products. Let's see. I'd say my first year at Apple was a whirlwind. Like my first week at Apple, I arrived, sat at my desk, was talking to folks, learning what was going on, went home that weekend, bought some furniture, started moving to my apartment, got in Monday, my second Monday, and my boss said, "Where were you this weekend?" I was like, "Oh, I was moving to my apartment." He's like, "No, you should have been here. We got products to ship." And that's
Apple way.
Yeah, that's how I started my career at Apple. I'd say that the next 5 years were a complete whirlwind. Like going from iPod to first iPhone to doing several iPods, several iPhones, and an iPad in parallel. Kind of that rapid growth, that huge amount of hiring and onboarding taught me a lot about building products. And also, I'd say, spent a lot of time investing in relationships. And I'd say for all those guys who are building companies out there, and invest in the relationships. Like the guys and gals you meet, you will work with for your entire career. And I met a lot of great folks at Apple, many of which now work with me at Nest. And I'd say those kind of hard summers building those iPods and iPhones, those long weeks in China building the products, was a lot of great team bonding. And when Tony and I started Nest, it was one of the things we called on. We said, "Hey guys, I know we've done this before. You want to do it with us again?"
So pausing right there. So certainly when you go to battle with people, building these products, which a lot of times it is battle, you do build those amazing bonds. But like, share with us that moment where you're, I don't know if you're having coffee or a beer with Tony, or like, okay, let's go reimagine the thermostat.
The story goes, Tony was out of Apple. He was in France building a house in the US, kind of very high tech. And I had reached out to him saying, "Hey, I have some ideas. When you're back in town, let's get together." He's like, "I have some ideas too. Let's chat." Mm-hmm. So we met up at Madeira, right across from your office, actually, on Sand Hill, for lunch, October in 2009. So it was a long time ago at this point. Holy cow. It doesn't feel like that long ago, though.
Wow.
And we were talking, just chatting, catching up, and I was talking about some ideas I had about doing the home, and Tony was building a house and had some ideas about actual products to build in the house, and one thing led to another very quickly. We said, let's just do this. Let's go build a thermostat company. And that's how we started. We started as a company to reimagine the thermostat, and we'll use that as a seed crystal to go build this entire vision.
Mm-hmm. Now, certainly starting a company from scratch is really different than coming into a machine like Apple.
Big time.
I certainly do admire the intensity of the engineers at Apple. I saw that with a lot of the folks I hired to build WebOS. But like, what was some of the shocks that you experienced as you weren't, let's say, under the infrastructure of Apple as you were building up Nest?
So I didn't actually realize how much infrastructure we had until we didn't have it anymore. For example,
turns out the coffee does not disappear.
Oh my gosh! And the floors don't clean themselves either. Like even the basics. So that first summer starting Nest, we had our first 3 or 4 employees, and we were looking around at each other like, oh, we should get the operations team looking at contract manufacturers. We're like, oh, I guess we are the operations team. So like kind of realizing how big of a problem we just walked ourselves into. So we flew out to China to talk to folks there. We called suppliers, and like we had to do everything ourselves. It was great. I mean that was a lot of the reward of those early days, is really seeing everything that goes into building products. Hardware, software, manufacturing, cloud services, the apps, the design side. We had to literally do everything. Whereas at Apple, we didn't even realize how much was kind of behind us to get things done.
And actually, along those lines, I think a lot of product companies that are a combination of hardware, software, and cloud services kind of underestimate at least one of those. Oftentimes it's hardware. You came from a company that excels at that. What kind of guidance can you give the folks in the audience who are thinking about building a product that includes hardware?
It will take twice as long as you expect. It will take 3 times as much money as you expect. So just plan for that ahead of time. A lot of companies pitch me these days, and I'm always surprised. Like, yeah, we'll do this in 9 months, 12 months. We need like $4 to $5 million to get started. I'm like, oh man, you're just getting started. It's going to take twice as long for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that periodically we see, even on the venture side, is that a company will come in with an amazing idea or industrial design, but if you've actually built products, that actually sometimes the perfect design is not the optimal for manufacturing. How do you balance that, high, let's say, yield on the manufacturing line versus having a beautiful product?
So the way we approach design is actually, it's a collaborative process. So we have industrial design experts, we have mechanical experts, we have manufacturing experts, we have electrical engineers, and we have product managers, and we all get together around the table when we work on design. It's not just the ID team comes with the design saying, hey, this is what we will go build. It's much more collaborative, because in the end of the day, it takes all of these teams to make it happen. So like we often look around the room saying, oh, well, if we do it this way, we'll be easier to manufacture, or if we do it this way, we'll be able to save a few dollars. It's a very iterative process. It's not here is the design like Simba. It's not at all like that, actually. It is a much, much more iterative process. It takes months and months to get the design right.
Probably because Ruby came from Apple, we did a similar thing with WebOS, and it was amazing to see a great relationship between designers and engineers. In that world, what is the role, if any, for a product manager?
So we rely on product managers to be the voice of the customer. So someone on the team needs to be out there, either talking to customers, learning what they're looking for, reading the reviews, understanding what's in their minds, why they're buying the product, why they're not buying the product, what they love, what they don't love, and what they want next. It's very much about being that kind of the voice of the consumer inside the company.
One of the things that I think one of the first meetings we had was you were having some challenges on the cloud services side, and you were very candid about knowing what you didn't know and saying like, wow, like we need help here. It'd be interesting to kind of share with the group, what are the other areas that you said you were kind of self-aware to know, like, oh, we need to bring in some expertise because, yes, we know this piece, but we don't know this other.
I am a big believer in augmenting your weaknesses in a big way. So no one's perfect, and no one has kind of the full spectrum of expertise. It's not possible. Like, no one's really a Renaissance man. It's false, right? So very quickly, Tony and I realized where our weaknesses are, so we tried to augment that. But just for me personally, I am really bad at keeping things on lists and checking things off and just being that super detail-oriented project manager. So actually, that was our second hire. Someone who was going to keep track of everything we needed to get done to make sure it happened. Just knowing what my weaknesses are, I know I need a partner on that. And as you said, like cloud services side, like it built tons of hardware products and built software for hardware before, but understanding the back end, how to make it scalable, how to make it cost effective, and how to make it never go down. That's not something I'd done before. So an area we needed to hire significantly.
How big, remind me, how big was Nest when Google acquired it, and how big is it today?
So we were about 300 and change people when Google acquired us last year. So it's about a year ago, actually.
Huh.
Almost to the day, actually. Almost to the day. And we were about 300 and change people, and we're almost 1,000 today.
Wow.
So a lot of growth. As you can imagine, lots going on these days.
A lot of products, not just one.
Yeah, exactly. So like some people call the sale of a company an exit, and for us, it's almost a second beginning. It's the next evolution of the company. Like we're in it every day, building the dream, and it's really amazing.
Because you're kind of left alone to go build these great new products.
It's a fun experiment to see, can you build a new company within a much larger company? Like it's happened a lot before. I mean, Berkshire Hathaway, this is their model of acquiring companies and helping them grow, resourcing them for rapid growth. This is what Warren Buffett's been doing for decades. And Larry and Sergey are doing it now with Google.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. When you went from 0 to 300 and now 1,000, maybe 3,000 soon, one of the challenging things for especially a founder, at least from my own experience, is like how do you scale yourself and how do you almost kind of unlearn biases that you had along the way that you had to one day go, oh wow, this used to work and now this doesn't work anymore.
You said it very well, unlearn. So I'm in the process of unlearning a lot of startup bad habits. So as a startup founder, as an early leader, you have to be in every detail of the company, knowing everything that's going on. You should be connecting, talking to all the folks in the company all the time. Well, I can't do that anymore, and actually I shouldn't do that anymore. As the company has grown, I actually need to trust, delegate, and start to build new leaders. And those leaders now actually need to go build new leaders. We're at the point now where I don't even know some of the leaders in the company. We've grown so much. And it's an astonishing thing to happen, to watch that transition happen and happen so quickly. And over the last 12 months, I mean, the team has almost tripled. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And if you think about the amount of process that has to go into that growth, it no longer be just a word of mouth kind of culture. You actually need to have formal process. And that's an evolution that most companies will go through as they grow. Just for us, it's happened much quicker.
Yeah, I was just thinking, as you mentioned that, 3x, and even like my experience at Twitter was like 6x. And I think when you grow that fast, which is really unnatural, there can be a lot of, we'll say, blood. And so how have you been able to hold the culture together as you're kind of accelerating the growth like that?
So actually, I think it's a little bit of both holding and actually letting the culture evolve. I think culture is not something that's tops down. Culture is something that comes from the team. And actually, every new person we bring in, every new team that we acquire, brings some new DNA to the company. And it's not our goal to change that DNA. It's to evolve it together. So the reason why we hire smart people is we want to hear what they have to say. So actually, one of the things that we've been working on as a team is how do we foster all these new ideas and ways of doing things in a way that's very productive. I mean, it can't be total chaos. You can't have 1,000 different ways of building products. But how do we learn from all these new groups that we're acquiring or hiring? And it's a lot of communication. In fact, like Jose, who kind of runs talent and people ops for us, is very much an over-communicator. That's kind of his philosophy. Like, we need to over-communicate both top down and bottom up just to make sure we're all in sync on things.
You're right, because certainly when you're in one room, you can have a very informal, and as you grow, you need kind of more intentional kind of communication.
That's right.
So let's say tomorrow you left Nest, which I know it happened, but and I write you a check for $10 million. What would you do different in terms of company building? I won't push on the type of product because I think that's a silly discussion. But like, what would you do different structurally?
Interesting. I think one of the things that I would do differently, just thinking about it, is you need different types of folks at different stages of the company. And one of the things that we did at Nest was we tried to hire ahead. Like, we're going to go build this, let's say, marketing organization, or we're going to build this manufacturing organization. So let's go hire the leader that we think we need 2 years from now today. Whereas that's not necessarily the right thing to do. Sometimes it's okay to hire someone for the job you need today and have them transition into a new role in the future. I think we tended to hire ahead at Nest, and thinking about if I were to build another company again, hiring people who were best suited for the early startup phase that you're in today would be really, really good.
That's insightful. Yeah. So kind of switching into more the area that Nest is in around the Internet of Things, and depending on your analyst report, maybe 50 billion objects or sensors in 2020. There's a lot of implications for that. We're certainly pretty excited from a venture side, but there's also things that we have to think through on privacy and security. How do you and Tony think about that for Google with these?
I mean, we see it as our opportunity, and people are looking to us to lead in this industry, and we've been very, very firm in terms of kind of our privacy principles, what Nest believes, and actually how we want to drive the industry for this. We published. It's funny. I'm gonna say this. It's actually rare. We didn't just publish a privacy policy. We published like a manifesto in plain English so people could read it and understand it.
That's novel.
Yeah, it's not plain English. Like, a lawyer didn't write it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We are very transparent with our users as to what we do with data, why we do it, and letting them have the control to opt in, opt out, delete their data, and control where it goes. And we think that by us leading by example and bringing other companies into the fold through our Works with Nest program, that will instill kind of greater protection in the entire industry.
Yeah, it feels like there's times where not all consumers understand the benefit of data being shared and actually improving the product. And I think Nest is a great example of, look, by using the data of the population, like we can make your experience actually better.
I mean, data is critical to improving a product. We've done, let's see if I can remember, on the order of probably 25 to 30 software updates for our products over the last couple of years. That's a ton. And many of those software updates were not just bug fixes, but insights we had learned through the data we've collected, and improving people's energy usage, reducing false alarms. So with Nest Protect, our smoke alarm, we were able to infer from steam data, from humidity, the difference between smoke and steam. And that's not something that anyone has ever done in the industry before because they never had the data in a mass scale. That's kind of real quality of life improvements we're able to do because we have that data. And the key is to provide the right protections in place to keep users in control and to be trusted.
I'm going to kind of come back to an earlier topic. It's going to sound like I'm jumping way back, but what I've seen both in companies I work with and in companies that I work with today, the interaction between hardware and software on the engineering side can be really hard because hardware will always feel like, oh, you can fix it in software. And software will say, well, why didn't you get it right in the first place, hardware guys? And like, what have you kind of learned from both Apple and Nest to share with the audience that like how we can make sure that interaction is good?
So fundamentally, hardware and software, they live on different timescales. And software wants to ship fast, they want to iterate quickly. Hardware takes 8 weeks to iterate. And those two kind of trains moving at different speeds require someone else to help do the interlocks. So I'm a big believer in project management. And in some respects, we at Nest and actually Apple as well, we put project managers in kind of key leadership positions on programs. With the idea being, let's make sure that interlock happens and make sure that when this train is arriving, the other one arrives at the same time. And it's often very difficult to do. And sometimes, in the end of the day, you may have to hold up one train to make sure the other is arriving. And you have to create unnatural interlocks.
How do you get that right cultural balance, though? There's an engineering culture, but then realizing these time continuums are different. I mean, in a way, even with cloud services, you have a similar situation where, the DevOps teams, there's no incentive for change. Right. You go to the product team, they just want to change, continually iterate, right? So, and that's an interesting cultural balance. Like, what have you kind of learned?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're living this every day. So on one end of the spectrum, we have our cloud teams. They want to ship every 2 weeks. Then we have our kind of embedded software teams. They want to ship like once a month, every other month. Then our hardware teams want to ship once a year. And basically, in some respects, the stuff, the shit flows downhill. And the things that can't get fixed in hardware try to get fixed in the embedded software, and things that can't get fixed in the embedded software end up trying to get fixed in the cloud side. But in the end, having those teams come together as a product team, as long as we have kind of tight communication, we're able to solve these kinds of issues. And I think the key thing here is by doing all three kind of disciplines, and doing mobile at the same time, we're able to accomplish features we would never be able to do otherwise. By actually having each link of the chain and understanding kind of each time the customer touches Nest, what is their experience, we're able to create a better product.
I know we have a very international audience, and one of the areas in the world that's particularly fascinating to me, especially with hardware, is Shenzhen and some of the things going there. Have you visited?
I've been there a lot.
Many times. Okay, so I'm kind of curious. I mean, different people said, well, maybe that's kind of a hardware equivalent of Silicon Valley. And And it's also enabling, I know, a bunch of colleagues of mine to just hack away and build like pretty amazing things pretty cost effectively. I'd love to just kind of get your take as an expert in the area.
So I am not a fan of outsourcing design. It's something that you have to do yourself. Like there's some elements of kind of product engineering that you could say, hey, work with a contract manufacturer and they can help you build it. But in the end, like you have to own your product and you have to own the quality of the product because at the end of the day, when you ship that product, it has your brand on it.
But if I'm a startup and let's say I'm a software guy and I don't know anyone on hardware, like what do I do? Where do I go?
I mean, the first thing I would do is hire someone who's an expert. Like much like we said earlier,
Yep.
like you can't know everything and no one's really a Renaissance man, especially not given how broad technology is these days. But you have to hire experts in their disciplines. And if you're a software guy and you have a really cool idea to do kind of a hardware software product, your next hire probably should be a hardware guy.
Mm-hmm. But, so I hear you, and I agree. Just having been that person where people come and they go like, hey, help me find. It's not always easy to find. Because there's actually very few people that really have actually built product in hardware and software.
It's pretty rare. That said, like, if you think about internationally, there are a lot of companies that build products internationally, between Taiwan and Korea and China and Europe. I mean, like there are hundreds of companies building products. And think about the mass exodus from some of the old school mobile phone makers like Nokia.
Yeah.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of great engineers out there these days.
I guess an example would be interesting, your opinion on like Xiaomi and what they're doing, which I think is quite remarkable.
It is, actually, it's unbelievable. And it will, if you see kind of the next iteration of mobile and how the industry will change, I think Xiaomi is driving a lot of that. They're moving incredibly quickly. Their business model is very different in that they're compressing profit margins. Like they're more of a kind of make money on the services, less on the hardware.
Yeah.
I think it's going to change business models.
Like every layer is getting commoditized on the way up.
Indeed.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for spending time this morning, and thank you all for, again, being here so early, and hopefully have a great day.
Great to be here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.